Welcome back, everyone. My name is Kareen Mills. I'm your host. We are fortunate today to have Miss AmberJane Arquette, who is the plant whisperer I call.
Yeah,
She just wrote a book, so we're going to hear all about this book today. But first, AmberJane, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you, Kareen, for having me.
You're super welcome. So, I love showcasing people's childhood. So, tell us about your childhood and what are the things in your childhood that you learn, struggle with, and I also love hearing about dreams of children because I think that when we dream as a child, we're scared to dream when we are adults, but when we're a child, we're never scared no matter how big that dream may seem. So, and sometimes it takes, going through life to actually manifest into that dream. And you're like, gosh, I've always wanted to be this since I was a child. And now I'm here. It's like you didn't really think of it that it was going to happen, but you said it or you dreamt it. So, tell us about your childhood and take us through this journey.
Well, one thing you say about that specifically pops up when you talk about that element of that we had a dream and either thought it wouldn't happen and then it is writing a book. So I have always loved writing and expressing myself in that way. And always thought like I might write some books when I retire. Like that will be my retirement plan. And so it became a reality now. And it was really quick and it felt really spirit led. And so that we can get more into that later. But instantly, that's one of the things I thought of. As I grew up, so I had my mom and dad actually at 6 months old relocated the three of us to Humboldt County away from San Diego. And so there was a lot of, I think, starting out of not being around family, not growing up with grandparents and aunts and uncles and things like that. So I've had to learn more and more about how to be in family. And so the life around me was family, nature was family, friends were family, and I kind of created that wherever I would go. So I think that matches, I'm a Sagittarius, so it matches my just natural, I want to connect in with people and make friends wherever I go. And then my mom and dad divorced when I was 2. And so we went and lived on a farm for probably like almost 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And that time I really remember like starting to talk out loud. I had imaginary friends and started to really connected to the natural world. And then that was also when I started noticing that I had like stronger than just intuitive gifts. And so one of those gifts was Reiki, which now we know is Reiki. So I would do like hands-on healing for the kids in my preschool whenever they got hurt. And of course, the teachers thought I was pretty strange and called my mom a couple of times to ask if I was okay. And then after a while, we moved in with another family. And when I was 8, my mom met my stepfather, which then they got married when I was 10. And that was a really tough time for me because my mom was my world, it was like me and her. And I had so much freedom with her. And then to swiftly go into this family dynamic of having a father in the house. And so I'd say some of the lessons I learned was adaptability, definitely growing up with all the different changes. Even when we lived as a family, and I had a stepsister and a stepbrother, but stepbrother was really a lot older than me. Mm-hmm. So I'd say, one of my talents, again, was connectedness. I wanted all of us to change our names, so we all had a family name.
Wow.
And, you know, I think that was a big challenge for me, was uh, having that relationship with my mom where it was just me and her, and then she wanted to invite in this another authority, and there wasn't any really like conversation with me around it. Like I felt like I didn't have any say, and who knows, you know, this is coming from like an 8, 9, 10-year-old perspective. But I think that's one of the things I show up in my parenting style, is really considering my daughter's position and at least allowing her voice to be heard. So that was a big lesson that I put into my life at this point. And then another dream that I had growing up was that I didn't grow up with TV. I got TV introduced at 8 when we lived with a different family, and they had a TV. We got to watch it every once in a while. And especially at 10, I started watching TV in the house with my new family. And I saw the solid gold dancers, and I was like, I want to be a solid gold dancer. So that is dating me for sure. But I think that that's true even today. Like I want to dance around the world. I want to share that joy and kind of cultivate all of that energy and passion and aliveness that dancing gives. And I feel like that's something that I bring out in a different way besides being on TV and doing dance moves.
Wow. So when you hand healed your the kids at school, and your parents were called, were these kids your peers or people you just didn't know and you just went up to them and helped them heal?
I would say that they're probably my peers because they were in school. So we had, you know, every day together. I don't remember any of them being like a close friend. Like I don't have any memory of them necessarily.
Wow. This is amazing. Wow. So you really started young and you just kind of said, I own this space. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think I've always been pretty courageous in that sense, and it's always been very real to me. So
Wow.
one of the hardships was with my new dad was that he was very practical. And so when I would say that I hear things or I see things, like for example, we lived in a house that had a grandmother in a rocking chair who hung out in the house, and it was a disincarnate spirit. And I would talk about her, you know, and he would just tell me I had a wild imagination and that I wasn't telling the truth. And I think that was really hard for me to hear because it was so real and so true to me. And now I have so much more understanding about what that was. Also in high school, I could see people's auras, and I got a book on auras and colors, and I would do like little readings for people until I started to feel pretty different and weird. And then I was like, maybe I don't want to expose myself too much.
Then you started being an adult and you're like, I need to back off a little bit.
Yeah, incredibly so, especially with being empathic and kind of on the like borderline of psychic. And it wasn't until my daughter was born, like going through the birth process, did I feel like the psychic doors like fully open. But yeah, it was kind of hard to kind of see. The one thing that I really love is that I always see the goodness in people no matter what. But I could see where there was struggling, and sometimes I wanted to talk to that struggle, and yet it was like none of my business, you know? Or like it would be kind of shocking if I brought up something that was not out in the open.
They'll be like running away from you, like, who are you?
Yeah, totally.
So you talk about you having an imaginary friend, because I spoke to a really spiritual lady that was on my podcast, and she talks about seeing spirits as well as a child. And she never really developed it until now because she was told that that's not true. And
Yeah.
with you, you feel very strongly and very real about it. But how many times do we as parents too, and I'm sure there's a lot of parents that's listening to this, that we don't believe our kids. And I personally, because I grew up Catholic and we believe in, you know, it's the religious, I'm not very religious, I'm very more spiritual, but it's that background of, I know the spirits around us, because when a loved one is laying in bed in their deathbed and they're about to die, for example, my grandma, when she was about to pass, my sister, because I wasn't there, and my sister says squeeze, because she couldn't, she was in a coma, squeeze my hand if it's a yes, and then just let it go if it's no. And so my sister started asking, is grandpa around? And she squeezed the hand so hard. And is uncle so and so here? And she squeezed so hard, like all these dead loved ones that she, my sister named. Every single time she named the name, my grandmother would squeeze her hands, and that's a yes. So it's like we believe in the spirits, the souls, all these stuff. When I was a new mom, because my father-in-law passed away in the house that we now live in, because my husband bought the house from his mom when his dad passed, and his mom didn't want to be there and he didn't want to let go of the house, so we lived there. Anyways, my kids would always like, sounds like they're talking to somebody, you know, when they were little. So I believe in all those things. And one time, this is really freaky, but also like I knew it, they're real. I was doing this video virtually and having a FaceTime with my cousin over in Tucson, Arizona. I was sitting on my couch. It was 11 p.m. and my husband was at our friend's Shane's house. And she, like, I think I looked away for a little bit, and she was like, oh, is Ty home? That's my husband's name. And I said, no, the kids are sleeping and I'm the only one in the living room talking to you. She was like, oh, I just seen somebody walk by in white shirt. Oh. And I'm like, oh, that's probably Ty's dad. And like for a minute I was really scared, but then because of my background, knowing that they're everywhere, I was like, oh, that's probably Ty's dad's spirit or soul walking around the house or something. You know, like by saying that out loud, like my scare went away. So my question to you is, I know it's such a long question.
No,
right?
That's great.
What can you advise parents that maybe their children are saying those things like, Mom, I see spirits, or Mom or Dad, I was talking to a spirit yesterday, and like, how do we receive that as parents?
I think there's two things that I think about and navigate with my daughter. And one is I really ask her to tap into her angels. There are other allies and guides and benevolent, compassionate ones that tend to us, and that's my belief. But really kind of asking our angels to step in if there's ever a spirit that doesn't have the best intent. So I have that kind of candid conversation with my daughter.
Wow.
Where we talk about, asking our angels to support us in the day. And I think that's great as a all around. I think it's something that we forget, is that we live in a spiritual world. I agree with you. Like there is unseen world, and there's all this energy that we don't see with our naked eye. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not there. And science is beginning to prove that it is. So I like telling people that to access the good, because it can be just like the world out, like you learn these things to navigate the world, like you wouldn't put all your money in your back pocket in an envelope and then walk the subways of,
right,
New York or something like that. So I feel like there's a lot to be taught around that aspect of having your child be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really challenge people to just believe, or at least listen. If you can't validate that what they're saying or what they're experiencing is true for you, especially before 7, they know that the brain doesn't distinguish between what is real and what isn't. So a lot of that imagination and reality is very much mixed. It's around 7 that the brain starts to realize that things are real or not real. Like my daughter at 7.5 is now asking if Santa is real. And so I guess my advice too is to just listen and honor that they're having an experience. Mm-hmm. And whether their brain knows it's true or not, or whether it's true or not. And a lot of times I feel that when it's a very young kid, between that ages of baby and 7, a lot of times the angels are there, or what we call spirit animals in the shamanic philosophy, and that they are interacting and caring for that child and looking out for that child.
Wow.
And then later in life, we have to spend more time asking them to come in and support us and help us.
Wow. So you tone it down a little bit as you probably became teenager and early 20s. When did you start re-owning it for you and use it as a tool for people, to help people? Because I know you have the superpower in understanding what plant we need to use depending on the situation that we're currently in. Mm-hmm. And for the listeners out there, I was fortunate enough to be exposed by a lot of the things that you do during Spark in Portland, an event for women, and you were doing a lot of the sound. Is it like a sound therapy healing. Or
sound healing? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Sound healing, and we did a lot of sort of meditation and just talking to spirits and talking. You use oils to sort of enhance. Is that correct?
That's
when I say that? Yeah. Like enhance
the like, amplifiers.
Yeah, the experience. So when did you realize that, you know what, I need to go back to normal and quit toning it down?
Mm-hmm. Go back to normal. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I hear a lot of people that have gifts go to drugs and alcohol. And so, yeah, like I would say, I became a bartender for a decade, in my 20s and 30s, because I just couldn't handle it. There wasn't like a normal place for me. And I was like, I remember it in my 20s being like, what is seeing auras? How is seeing auras going to make you money? Like, you can't like look in the Sunday paper for a job on, the gifts that I came with. And I think what was really pivotal was I started experiencing the oils. To tell you the truth, like I had my daughter and I felt so wide open. My gifts were really strong. And I was kind of hiding in my house. And I met a woman who showed me the doTERRA essential oils. And I was like, okay, I'm going to help myself and my daughter to lower our anxiousness and anxiety so that we could be more functional and like, go on play dates and go to the park and different things like that. And I remember, and I say this in my book and on my blog, but I put all the oils that I had, it was probably like 20 at the time, I put them up on my mantle in the living room, and I started to hear like this singing. And I was like, no way, what's going on? My oils are singing to me. And I remember hearing a woman a couple of years earlier say that her father was a gardener, and he always believed that the flowers sang to people.
Wow. I have goosebumps.
Yeah. And then now there's a video on YouTube about singing sunflowers. This woman has recorded the frequency of sunflowers and it sounds like singing. So I love that this all comes around, you know, that we have these experiences and these inklings of like, is this happening? And then later, usually there's a scientific study about it.
Wow.
Or someone else who has experienced it. So I started using the oils more consistently, and I really did feel that spirit was coming through the oils. I felt so much energy and vitality. And then I also felt my body and my mind wake up. It was like my cells were waking up in this beautiful way. And so I would say from there, I started studying everything I could about the plants. I had already been raised as an herbalist as my mother. So when we lived on the farm, we used natural medicine, and we actually use that all the way up. So one of the things that I mention in my book is like, why did the plants pick me? And I think that has to do with my disconnect to modern medicine. Like, I never went to the hospital. I never really had, you know, an experience where I leaned on modern medicine. It was always herbs in our house, tinctures, poultices, and, you know, nutritional foods, and, you know, all those things. So when the herbs, or when the essential oils started really kind of creating this effect where, you know, let's fast forward a few years later. So I had studied the emotional benefits, that the physical, the emotional, and then I met this woman who knew a lot about the spiritual aspects of the oils. So I started kind of studying with her.
Wow.
And that's when I started getting I got intuitive hits that like somebody needed to work with this plant or this oil. And I'd just be sitting with them and talking, and all of a sudden it was like, you know, geranium would pop into my mind, and I would be like, why am I thinking of geranium? And then we'd talk, and then it would come back. It was like this thought I couldn't get out of my mind. And I'm like, maybe geranium's trying to tell me that like this person needs it. And it was usually very applicable to their situation. And I used some of my reference books to kind of get that validation. And often the reading in the book was really right on. And so I kept trusting more and more. And 3.5 years ago, I started going to Light Song, which is a school for 21st century energy medicine and core shamanism. And that just, it was like they were speaking my language.
Wow.
It was amazing to meet people who had the same gifts. I wasn't weird anymore. Like,
you're normal.
I was normal. Like, it was no big deal. We could have these crazy far out conversations, and it was like we were talking about the weather. So that was a savior to me. So I feel like the oils and the schooling that I started going to was really when everything pivoted, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to help people heal with these gifts, and I'm supposed to help and this is kind of more my mission now, is like bringing the plants back into the home, because I feel like we have been so disconnected to the natural rhythms and our natural allies of the earth, that's part of why we treat her so unwell. Like, we're not good stewards of the earth right now because we don't have much of a relationship with the earth. So I feel like getting the oils into people's homes is such an easy way to then start to have a relationship that, like, oh my gosh, peppermint can help me and my baby with a tummy ache. Like, that's incredible. How empowering is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a disconnect. It's a connection, you know, like we talk about people, relationships. I talk about my husband a lot, where, when you lose connection, and love will always be there, you know, like you say, you love someone, because most of us love people unconditionally, and it's our nature, but it's a connection piece that I think will make love disappear in our feelings and our emotions. Even though it's still there, it's just not enhanced because we're not having a connection. And I think it's the same way with the oils and how you leverage it and use it for your clients and friends and families. in order to kind of give them some connection. So I love your mission, getting plants back in the home.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. My husband, it's funny because he's always like, yeah, that's not going to help me. No, that's not going to do anything. And then the other night he said he woke up that day, like his arms was just like elbow was hurting, his arms. He goes, do you mind if you rub some of those oils? I'm like, I thought you don't believe in it, because when the boys are sick, that's what I do. Or when they're starting to feel like they're getting sick. I get my cocoa oil and I rub the oils. And I'm not as intuitive as you where I know exactly what to use. I just use whatever I have. And that's my next question for you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That would be my next question. But so I think he's starting to kind of just see that, it's avoiding a lot of sickness in the house. And anyways, he asked the other night, and as soon as I rubbed it, he goes, wow, it already feels good, and I'm like, you really can't see the benefit unless you apply it, and you're in pain, because it's that contrast between having the pain and not having the pain, or relieving the pain. We don't appreciate not having pain until we have pain and all that good stuff. So my question to you is, how do you know, and you had coffee with me, and my next question would be, my first is, how do you know which oil, because there's a ton of oils, right? Which oil to use for a specific thing? Is it something that they gave you a guide for, or is it because you're so connected to the plants and you're just so knowledgeable about it that you just, boom, you know exactly what to use based on what either they tell you or what you feel like they need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's both. I think part of it is that I, have been learning about essential oils. I had a background in herbs. And so it was second nature to kind of pick up that information. So yeah, I've read a lot of books. I've listened to a lot of talks. I've done so many trainings on how to use the oils. And so that was actually something I did when I wanted to write the book. I stopped learning. I stopped listening to anybody, because I really wanted to make sure that the plants had a voice and a message that was truly theirs, that they wanted to be heard in this book. So it's been probably 9 months now that I have not been listening to other people. And sometimes I see some of my favorite people that I like to learn from, like Desiree Mangendog is another one, is one that has written a book. And I wouldn't go and watch the video or go to the talk, because I felt like I really wanted to create that sacredness around the writing. But so I truly believe that we all are very intuitive, and that we all receive information besides just our 5 senses. And a lot of times there's just not words around that or conversations around that. So we don't notice it as much, right? It's kind of like, what if we never had the word for a door? It would literally become a wall. And if we never knew that it was a door, we'd never use it, right? So I kind of like that analogy, because language really defines our reality. And so one of the pieces that I feel is really helping people connect with the plants via the oils, and then building up that intuitive practice of, what is my internal voice saying? What does it sound like? What does it feel like when it's talking to me? And so right now, starting January 17th, I have it in Portland. So for Portland metro area and Vancouver area, where me and a friend are doing a 8-week course on using the oils for specific protocols that help you embody worthiness. It's called Own Your Worth. And in that, part of our teaching is going to be around tapping into your own innate wisdom and intuition. So there are tons of books out there. And I would say if somebody wanted to, learn more about the oils or how to use them, there's in literally the 10 oils that I picked to write about in the book are your basic 10. I knew that probably
Okay.
almost everybody would have those oils, or those would be the most useful oils for their household. So for lavender, it's the oil of blessing in the spiritual realm. And so we can
Mm.
bless our children with it. We can send a blessing to another person. We can ask for blessings through using or diffusing the oil. But then it's also
Mm-hmm.
amazing for burns in the kitchen or helping us relax. Or there's just like 100 ways to use lavender.
Wow. That's so cool. So when you were talking to me, were you thinking of oils that could help me when we had our
We had
coffee?
our conversation.
Because you're probably like oil, oil, oil.
Probably. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I would have to go back into that
That
moment.
means that means I have no issues. Just kidding.
No issues. So you got it all together. Well, just right now,
Yes, right.
Luca is coming up, but I'm like, why are you coming up? See, it's still that human part of me where I doubt, like, well, why would Melaleuca want to work with you? So I can
That's
tell
so
you a
cool.
little bit about Melaleuca. So Melaleuca is a champion for us when it comes to connecting in or feeling other people's feelings.
Mm.
And often I suggest for people to rub Melaleuca, diluted or neat. So neat means without the carrier oil, and then diluted means with the oil, with like a fractionated coconut oil or even an olive oil. But you rub it on your belly, above and below the navel. And what that does is that gives you an energetic boundary between you and the people you work with, or between you and your husband who's super grumpy, or between you and especially with the holidays, where
Oh,
sometimes
yes.
it can get dramatic and stressful. And so you can use Melaleuca and say, I really want to feel my joy and my love and my connection. Can you help me hold that sovereignty
Wow.
in my body?
That's so cool. So tell us about
Yeah.
this book. You've told us a little bit about it, and you talk about the 10 different oils. Tell us about the title of your book and what are the 10 oils. We have a little bit more time to
Okay.
we don't have to dive in each oil, but just like the basic purpose of each and every single one of them.
Yeah. So the book is called Plant Wisdom,
Mm.
and the subtitle is Everyday Spiritual Practices with the Most Common Essential Oils. And so what I did was I go into what we call in the shamanic realm is a journey.
Hmm.
And so it's, some people call it a trance state,
Hmm.
but it's more like you're tapping into that intuitive realm and also what they call the shamanic consciousness. And so it's a way that we can connect into the unseen and get messages, and it always follows your intention. So my intention for each oil when I asked to talk to lavender, melaleuca, frankincense, lemon, when I asked what gift they have for us in our evolution on the planet and the evolution of ourselves, which I call ascension, which you can
Mm.
Google ascension and ascension symptoms to see if you are experiencing ascension. But basically, it's like our own personal growth. So how
Wow.
could they help us in this realm when it comes to spirituality? And how could we work with them on a daily basis? So not only, again, are we inviting plants into our daily life to have that connection to the natural world, but we're also inviting in a spiritual practice that's really easy and simple. It can be done anywhere. And that's another aspect. I feel like that's the other side of my mission, is that people are so craving connection and love. And we can really find that in spirituality. And
Mm-hmm.
right now we have so many spiritual philosophies and practices and all these different things to tap into. It's not about religion anymore. It's like religion, oh my gosh, almost seems like 10% of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
True.
yeah. So the book focuses on each oil. I really wanted to give each, and I realized when I was writing the book that I wanted the book itself to be a healing, to offer a blessing and a healing just by reading the words. So one of the things that
Mm.
bothered me in the other essential oil books that I had was it was so focused on the negative,
Hold
and you
on a
were
second.